back to Scrooge from 1988. It's a silly movie, but you know I'll make it work. Starting out here at Santa's workshop, and shortly now a shoot-up.
It's Lee Majors, the $6 million band.
Yeah, a TV show from the 70s starring Lee Majors here. I've seen the first episode only. And Lee Majors has been a good boy all year, and it was just a TV show trailer. And here comes an ad of Robert Goulet. You've seen him in both Naked Gun movies, singing Christmas songs, and now a parody of Leave It to Beaver, a show from the 50s. And yeah, a parody of NBC for sure, since these guys watching are TV execs, especially Frank Cross, the president here, played by Bill Murray. Now you want to see the Scrooge promo, as the actor John Houseman is in it, and has actors Jamie Farr and Buddy Hackett in it as well. After watching that, Frank doesn't like his new idea for a show about Scrooge, and now Elliot Loudermilk, played by Bobcat Goldthwait, steps in to suggest something.
In charge, and I am.
And now shows a new trailer of Scrooge. And now the meeting is done, Elliot here giving his feedback, and now leaves, and Frank tells his personal assistant here, Grace, played by Alfre Woodard, to fire Elliot Loudermilk, and even rips off her son's drawing. Now has a list open for people who he has to give Christmas presents to, and sees Elliot pushed away from the building property. And Grace now gets a call that a Mr. Rhinelander is coming to see Frank soon. And here is Preston Rhinelander, played by Robert Mitchum, here to see Frank and to suggest some TV ideas, and tells him cats and dogs could become TV viewers. And congratulates him on the new Scrooge TV show.
Lunch tomorrow? Shay J? Right. Up, Sig. Yes, sir. Study this.
That was close. Here comes Bryce Cummings, played by John Glover. You've seen him in Smallville for sure. Wanting to see Preston, and now runs to Grace and tells her to pull out a file on Bryce. But she has to leave since she has to pick up her son. And she tells him that his brother is here, and here he is, James Cross, played by John Murray, and the two walk out in the open street talking about Frank's love for Christmas since it's good for business. Now he's got to go. Now at the Humanitarian of the Year conference, and receives his trophy, and Elliot speaking to himself as he walks home. And that was Frank's cab, and forgets his trophy inside since he doesn't care about words. And he's made it back to the office, and we see Grace with his son walking home. Meanwhile, Frank pouring himself a drink and hears knocking and turns into an explosion. And the skeleton walks in and knows who Frank is and pours himself a drink after all that shooting.
Adored by women. Adored! Let's be honest, Lou. You paid for the women.
So Lou Hayward, played by John Forsythe, who's been dead for 7 years and is here to tell Frank to not be like him, and tells him that he will be visited by 3 ghosts. And Lou has Frank in a neck grab, pushing it out the window since he won't listen, and it was just a nightmare. And now Claire calls up and was about to be sent to voicemail, and he sends her back an aggressive voicemail and coughs up a golf ball. And back at Grace's home using her Christmas bonus, and sees her youngest son is being pushed around, and Frank is...
Have you seen this morning's paper, Frank?
Ooh, who's that? She's pretty.
And Frank is shown that the grandma on the newspaper called about his Scrooge TV show promo and killed her just by watching it. And these two are happy and shows Grace a newspaper headline, and Frank is back on set with the new TV show in production, discussing adult matters. Here she is calling Frank by his nickname Lumpy, Claire Phillips, played by Karen Allen. Now he's been called to look at the dance practice, and here comes this guy needed to put on antlers on his mouse, and tells him to staple the antlers, and tells her to get out of here. And she's still concerned about his phone call, and now spots his little boy, and yeah, it's Grace's son. And here's hammering and is freaking out, and she hands him her business card, and now here comes Grace again with a phone call from the Times about the grandma dying. What an idiot Frank is. So next scene back with Preston Rhinelander at lunch, cleaning their silverware, and Preston has got something that can help out Frank, and it's Bryce Cummings again. Now it's almost time for the 3 ghosts coming to visit Frank soon, and shrieks hysterically, and the waiter brings Frank his drink. No one else sees that. And now he thinks he sees a waiter on fire, and it was just in his head, and walks out of the restaurant and waits for a cab. Now his cab driver does most extreme U-turn and now reveals himself. Yeah, another one of the ghosts, played by David Johansen, who actually died earlier this year. And he's the ghost of Christmas past. So Frank is locked inside, and we see Elliot again now have made it back to the year 1955 and back in Frank's old neighborhood. And no one here can hear him since they're both ghosts, as Frank sees his old life as a child watching TV. And here comes down his dad, Earl Cross, played by Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray's older brother. in real life, and gifts young Frank here veal, and older Frank starts crying and now tries to tell the ghost his life story, but gets confused with a TV show instead. And now it takes Frank back at the IBC office from past recent years, when Christmas parties were still frequent here. And Frank even sees himself with longer hair working, and we even see Lou Hayward before he became a skeletal corpse, and calls past Frank Fred. And Teen over here giving him a picture as a gift, and older Frank gets weird that the dumb blonde from the office was into him and now bumps into a better girl for him. Now you know how you got that nickname. And now she asks him if he wants to get some Chinese food and time travel back to 1968. And two see Claire Phillips in the bathtub and look away as 1968 Frank Cross calls her down to open Christmas presents and gifts her knives. And she gives him a religious book and she starts barking like a dog.
Your turn.
I've never liked a girl enough to give her 12 sharp knives.
Now fast forward to this Lassie Kids Live TV show rehearsal, the TV show from the 50s. And inside the costume is 70s Frank Cross with Lou Hayward there making appointments for dinner today and wants 70s Frank to come down with his girlfriend Claire. And 70s Frank would rather go to dinner with Lou Hayward than with Claire and their best friends, and Claire wants to separate for a while. And the Ghost of Christmas Past is disgusted. And the Ghost of Christmas Past leaves a modern Frank Cross in the 70s, but he's magically back in the modern IBC office as he notices Buddy Hackett in rehearsal. And we see Elliot again, unshaved and still looking for a job. And as Frank Cross is walking there talking to himself and just wants to buy a wife and ends up at the shelter, and these three homeless guys are here to comfort him.
Lynn, why do you keep calling me Dick?
I'm sorry, Mr. Burton. Maybe we don't know you well enough to call you Dick.
Yeah, Richard Burton died from drinking too much alcohol, actually. So Frank does his best Richard Burton impression, and here comes Claire because apparently she works here now. She has to go check on a fuse, and these two volunteers need her, and Frank tells them to go do it themselves. And he just wants to have Chinese food with Claire and he leaves. And now back at the IBC office rehearsal of the new Scrooge TV show, and Bryce Cummings, the director here, for now, and Frank doesn't like it. And now Frank Cross meets the third ghost, and she's a ghost of Christmas Present, played by Carol Kane. Balls of steel. And she punches him after that sparkling cross on his cheek that appears, and have made it here. They're outside Grace's apartment as she comes home to her children, and the ghost tells Frank that her husband was killed, and the little boy saw it with his own eyes. Next scene back at his brother's place and barking at the dog at James Cross's house here. His brother are watching The Addams Family. And James opens a gift and it's a VCR, and Frank never came to a single one of the Christmas parties he had at his house previously. And gets carried away with questionnaires, and Frank getting hit by the toaster has now made it here, inside the sewer. And sees Herman here, played by Michael J. Pollard, who is frozen, and yells he should have stayed with Claire. Frank just wants to get out of here.
It doesn't smell like...
And he was under the set the entire time, more goofy comedy. And he just sits on his knees for now just rolling with the new episode for the Scrooge TV show, and Frank drinking too much now. And Preston Rhinelander is watching the new Scrooge show at home with his wife.
Go on, mice. Go on, mice.
You see?
Indeed.
Works like a charm.
They do. They bring you luck. Are you...
He wasn't kidding, pets would start to watch TV. And Frank opening up his Christmas present from his brother James. And with the new show going well, here comes a Ghost of Christmas Future with his hand coming out of the TV behind him. And here comes Elliot with a gun and starts shooting at Frank since his wife and baby daughter left him since he got fired. And the elevator saves Frank, and here's a Ghost of Christmas Future again. Now Frank has made it to the future and has made it to the psych ward and sees Grace looking at her son, locked up inside the cushiony room. And sees Claire in his fancy environment with white powder everywhere, and Frank apologizes. And the elevator has stopped here and sees his brother's wife, Wendy, played by Wendy Malick, since his brother is dead in the future, but he's here with a mustache. And it's actually Frank's funeral getting cremated. And he's back in reality. Again. And what the hell is he doing to Elliot? And is rehiring Elliot and will double his salary. And back to Buddy Hackett acting for the whole episode. Here comes Frank disrupting the episode and pissing Preston off, since this will ruin channel profits. And Frank showing his appreciation for the gifts he got, and Preston angrily calling in the IBC station.
He said he never felt that way about a man before, but he really liked you in a certain way.
Haha. And Frank kissing the extra under the mistletoe, and now it's Bryce Cummings' turn with this woman from earlier who got hit in the face. He even mentions he loves Claire Phillips and grabs a cap. And Frank just becomes too passionate now about giving during Christmas, and we ended off here with Grace's son saying the last words.
Something, big man?
God blesses everyone.
And he sees Claire watching. We ended off here kissing and singing, and directed by Richard Donner, and that is Scrooged from 1988. It's an okay movie. I wouldn't recommend it. It's kind of pretty forgettable. I know Christmas is over, but we're still in the last few days of the holidays, and I'll see you next time in the next episode. Take care. See you soon. Watch away. Enjoy your Kwanzaa, and almost Happy New Year. And take care.